let me take a moment to just welcome you. I'm Kim Coble. I'm the Executive Director for the Maryland League of Conservation Voters, and I'm honored to have my colleague, Kristen Harbeson, Director of Policy and Political Action here at Maryland LCV, join us today. We're kind of excited about this particular Friday Digest because Kristen and I, during a legislative session, talk all the time, and the conversations sometimes are 10 or 15 seconds with a quick update and a piece of information, and sometimes they're long strategies. So we have decided to be pretty unscripted, and we're going to have a conversation with each other, and you guys can join us and listen in and kind of see how the sausage is made from our end, and how we keep everybody up to date on things. Before we jump in, just a couple reminders. Please put your name and where you're from in the chat. We always like to be able to know who's joining us and welcome you. Also at the end, you'll get a 5-question survey. Let us know what you want to hear about. Let us know what questions you have. This is all about making sure you have the information, the inspiration, and the education to take action. So it's our job to give you everything you need, and then it's your job to take the action. So keep us posted on how we can be helpful in that partnership. So looking forward to your thoughts on that. And also, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, and we'll try to pick them up at the end. I have a few minutes for your questions to us. So don't hesitate, type them in, and we'll try to get to them. So with that, I want to thank you all for joining us. And today we're going to talk about crossover and also the status of some top priority legislative bills. These are not all the bills we're working on or all the bills that are in front of the environmental community. We've hand selected these because we've either featured them here with you and or we need some extra help with them. So here we go. Kristen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
To just get us started, what the heck is crossover?
Yes. So it is a big day in Annapolis. So every session is 90 days. The first 70 days, you have time to get all your bills through what's called first reader, which is when they literally assign the number of the bill, the committee work, the subcommittee work, the negotiations over amendments, going to the floor for second reader, which is when the whole chamber can add amendments, and then the third reader, which is when they actually vote the bill out of the first chamber. Crossover is a magic time where that is basically the deadline to get through that whole process in one chamber for each bill. And then the next 20 days after that is doing the exact same thing in a compressed timeline to try to get the same bill through first reader, second reader, third reader in the second chamber to get to final passage. And it's important to remember that a bill has to pass both chambers absolutely identically for it to get to the governor's desk. So if that doesn't happen, then there's all the other things. And I could go in long, but I'm not going to.
So the bill has to get discussed and approved by a subcommittee, then by a committee, and then it's heard 3 times on the floor. Same process on the other chamber, right? But it's in warp speed because we don't have 70 days, we have 20 days to get it in. Is that
exactly
right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And March 18th is the day. That's the deadline for the crossover. After that, it becomes much harder to advance a bill if it didn't cross over by March 18th. So
it doesn't mean that it's not automatically dead, but what it means is there's a whole second process that needs to start. It goes through a different committee. It goes through what's called the House or Senate Rules Committee, and they have to decide to let it out to go to the primary principal committee. And you need to be able to explain why were you not able to get it done in 70 days.
Okay. So it's crunch time, right? And let's just touch on some of the bills, and you can remind us what it is, what the bill's about, and maybe the status of it. First 2 are actually in pretty good shape, but I want to make sure we touch base on it. The manufacturing exemption bill.
Yes. The Greenhouse Gas Reduction Act has had up until right now an exemption from the manufacturing sector. Everybody needs to contribute to our climate goals, including the manufacturing sector. So this basically allows for MDE to include the manufacturing sector in the greenhouse gas reduction plan. It's passed out of committee. With the first committee, I think it needs to go through a second committee, but it's in good shape to what we call make crossover. So it should be done by the time it should get through the first chamber, which is the House, before Monday night. And which is especially important for that bill because it didn't have a bill being heard at the same time in the Senate, what's called a cross file.
Okay.
It's only been heard in the House.
And we're hearing good things about that bill, the status. Yep. Okay, what about Empower?
Empower, this is once more with feeling. We talked about this a lot last year. It made it through the House. It didn't make it through the Senate. It came back this year. It has passed. It has made crossover. It passed the third reader in the House the other day, and we are hearing good things that it will. I mean, nothing is done. Nothing is done until it's done, and so we need to make sure that we keep the pressure on the Senate, because this bill actually also doesn't have a Senate crossfile. So we need to make sure keep a pressure on the Senate to actually pass it this year. But I think it's in as good shape as we could expect it to be.
Great. And just to remind people, Empower program is a
yes, of course,
funding program for energy efficiency, especially to low and moderate income neighborhoods and communities and households. So it's a great program, reduces energy use through efficiency programs. All right, let's get into a little bit of the more gnarly ones, if you will. We mentioned this a couple weeks ago, I know. The governor unexpectedly put $90 million, moved $90 million into climate reduction programs, 3 specific: electric school buses, EV charging stations, and building electrification. So that's in the budget. We've been asking people to weigh in to make sure it stays in the budget as is. How are we doing?
We're doing good. So the budget starts alternating chambers. So this year it started in the Senate. So we've been focusing our effort in the Senate this year. So far, the $90 million is intact coming out of the Senate. And so we just need to keep the pressure on the House to make sure that it stays in good shape. But again, there's a lot of commitment from the legislative leaders as well as the governor's office to keep those numbers intact.
Okay, great. And we want to make sure that there's a continual drumbeat that this is really important, right?
Yes. Yep. Okay. We need every penny of that $90 million because we actually need a lot more than that. This is a down payment. This is a first step.
Okay. Awesome. Let's turn to a bill that I believe passed out of committee just this morning, the whole watershed bill, and yes. Or the whole watershed act is what it's called. So give us a quick overview on that and where we are at with it.
So it is it's a pilot program, and it's based on a project that a similar program in Pennsylvania that's been very successful. And this is being championed by the mighty Senator Sarah Elfreth in the Senate and the mighty Sarah Love in the House. And it's a pilot program that basically takes 5 watersheds across the state and throws everything at it, all different resources at it, to see whether that can make a measurable difference to the actual health of the watershed, rather than what's being called sort of restoration. Basically, more scattershot approaches to restoration.
Yeah, I'm particularly excited about this bill because it's a trial run, as you said. It's a pilot, but it takes a holistic approach to restoration, and that is sorely needed. So really pleased that this bill is moving along, right?
Right.
How are we doing with it?
Yep. Yeah, as you said, it passed out of the Senate committee this morning. And the random acts of restoration is the phrase I was trying to find. It's not random acts of restoration. It's really focused restoration. It passed out of the Senate committee. That's the only committee it needs to pass through in the Senate. So it should be good to go to get through at least one chamber on Monday, which is really the barrier, which is really sort of the threshold. We have strong hopes for this bill. But again, we'll need to make sure that it passes the Senate in good shape and then make sure that the House does the same good work.
Right. Let's talk about the renewable portfolio standard.
Let's.
What is for the 7th year in a row, this bill has been put in to change the definition of tier 1 energy sources. They're the clean energy sources, and we have waste incineration in there. So we're back for the 7th year.
Yep.
Did I say 7? It's 7.
Yeah. And this has been an issue since it's actually been an issue since 2011. So there have been active campaigns in the last 7 years at the very least.
Wow. So give us a little report. How are we doing with that?
Not as good. So, and just to clarify again what we're talking about. So we have commitments to have so much renewable energy. The state has a mandate to have 50% renewable energy. We're looking to move to 100% renewable energy. But to get that, we have to also figure out what do we mean by renewable energy? And there are some things considered, and this is the renewable portfolio standard, what we call the renewable energy. And what is considered, a couple of things that are considered renewable, not so much, they're renewable because trash is forever. There's always going to be more trash. So in that sense, it's renewable, but that's not good. We are burning trash and we're calling it clean. And that's not. So we need to take away the incentives and the subsidies for waste incineration so that we can put those same dollars to actual renewable energy of wind and solar and geothermal. And so we need to clarify what is defined as tier 1, which are the best of the best. That, again, as 7 years we've been working, we've tried many different ways, all different approaches. It doesn't look like it's going to happen this year, which is so frustrating for so many of us who've been working on it for a really long time in many different ways, lots of different strategies. Slim to no chance that it moves this year, but we'll still keep fighting and certainly come back again next year with it. If it's not, we'll not stop until this one gets done. But again, if you feel strongly about it, as we do, that's another thing you can call your legislators, and this is call both sides. Call your senators, call your delegates, call everybody.
Right.
This is a really big one.
Yeah. So there's a question that just came in about changing for the renewable portfolio standard, changing the goal from 100% renewable to 100% clean. And if I understand it correctly, the standard refers to renewable energy. There are 3 tiers of energy sources in there, and tier 1 is considered the clean energy, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So
it's about carbon emitting. It's about carbon emission. Renewable. It's about carbon emissions. So there's a difference between renewable and clean. There's a lot of discussion about different sources that may be non-renewable but are clean.
Okay.
Things like nuclear, just to bring that big word into it. But so there's the difference between renewable and clean is definitely something that is considered, but this is renewable energy. So nuclear is not considered renewable energy. It's not a non-renewable resource.
Okay. All right. Let's keep moving then and get to your favorite topic, which is the solar energy bills. So lots of discussion this session. Last year, we got a bill through to advance community solar, and this year we're tackling sort of the other arm of solar. But go ahead and describe where we're at with those bills.
Sure. And I, as you say, this is one of my favorite topics. I can go deep down the rabbit hole, and I will try to avoid doing that. We need to look at we need to look at sort of not only, so we need to get more solar energy. We need to figure out how we get more solar energy. We have, as part of this RPS, the Renewable Portfolio Standard goal of 50% renewable energy by the year 2030. 14.5% of that is meant to be solar. And we're nowhere close to meeting that goal. So how do we incentivize? How do we get more solar? But also, how do we get more solar where we want it? How do we push it to rooftops, to brownfields, to parking canopies, things that are where people really want them, and that's more expensive. So there was an effort again, led again by Senator Elbreth, to move into the to look at the state resources. What are the state incentives that we can use to incentivize solar where we want it? And so this is what's called the Brighter Tomorrow Act, which it's a great bill. It is one of our top priorities. We've been working really hard to get it there. It looks like it might move in this House first. It's championed by the mighty David Fraser Hidalgo in the House. These are people you've heard of before from us because they're incredible leaders in our work. And so it looks like it might move in the House first. There are a couple of challenges. It definitely needs your support in both chambers to get it moving and to make sure it can get past crossover.
Great. Awesome. Then I did want to mention a really important bill for one of our partner groups, and that's the Better Building Act. And this is a really good piece of legislation that requires new buildings to be built to be electric. And it frankly makes sense economically, it makes sense environmentally, and it makes sense for ownership and all aspects of it. It has been heard in both the House and the Senate committees, and it needs some help. Our legislators need to hear from you that this is an important bill. HB 1279 and SB 1023. If you need more information on the bills, contact us or contact our friends at CCAN, and they can help you out too. But please weigh in on that and get your legislators moving. Buildings are a huge source of greenhouse gas emissions, so shouldn't we be changing to make sure that the new buildings are not? All righty, that leads us up to our favorite topic, quote unquote, and that is the data center bills. And just to refresh everybody, the administration put a bill in to exempt the backup generators at data centers from a review by the Public Service Commission through what's called the CPCN process, Certificate of Public
Convenience and Necessity.
Convenience and Necessity. I have a mental block on that. And
just like to just put a pin on that, what that process is basically is the Public Service Commission being able to say that this is of public good. And so they can override local zoning and ordinances because it's a public good.
And spend a little time on that, Kristen, because the Public Service Commission's role is unique. By removing that review, there's a number of things that are lost, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the Public Service Commission talks to, as part of this process, they have many agencies all looking at the different pieces of this to decide whether this is a project that is, again, of the public good, looking at all the different aspects, looking at land use, looking at, and so everybody all at once. But there are some things that are very specifically only considered during this process, not any of the other environmental permitting process, say the Department of the Environment has. These projects will still have to go through all the Department of the Environment reviews, but the CPCN looks at the impact to the grid of projects, right? So how much energy is going to be drawn from it, and can the grid can the grid support it? It looks at ratepayer impact, and this is a little bit complicated because in the parts of CPCN, they do a preliminary assessment of what they think the ratepayer impact will be. After the project is completed, the utilities can come back to the Public Service Commission and add to the rate case of how much more they need to charge ratepayers for the increased demand. But without that preliminary review, there's no sort of baseline of what is reasonable, which is really important. The other things, of course, and this is where we are especially interested, is a couple years ago, the Public Service Commission was mandated by legislation to look at the climate impacts, not just the environmental permitting, but the climate impacts of these projects. And this is where these large projects with big diesel generators are considered. This is the project, is the climate impact of it. They also it was a bill to consider both climate and labor conditions in these process, and that we can go back to send more information about that bill and that led this. And so that's the process that is being that these big data centers are being exempted from.
Yeah, so the it's unfortunate that this is a bill that's in front of us, and we, just to bring everybody up to date, originally Maryland League of Conservation Voters came in with a support and 7 amendments that needed to be incorporated in order for us to stay neutral on this bill.
Not opposed.
Correct. It was a funny way of testifying, but Kristen testified in the House, I was in the Senate, and we created this category that was support only with these amendments. Since that time, we had good conversations with the Senate, Senate President's office, and the administration. And 4 of those concepts were included in some amendments, and we're grateful for that. 2 of them we educated ourselves and everybody else, and we realized that we could get at our concerns of those 2 amendments elsewhere, so we withdrew those. The last amendment that has been the sticking point and continues to be the sticking point is how do we offset the pollution that's coming from the backup generators? And to lay the groundwork on that, Kristen, why don't you to describe a data center, the backup generators, how many, what they produce?
Sure. So, and again, stop me if I just start rattling off big numbers, because it's big numbers. So the thing that started this whole thing was a single facility was looking for this exemption that we're talking about last summer. And it was denied this exemption because it wanted to have its backup generators considered individually. And I just want to be clear, when you're thinking about backup generators, if you're thinking about your home backup generators, it's something the size of a small table, right? These things are the size of rooms. These are 3 megawatt generators. And to give you a point of comparison for that, a single megawatt of solar energy is between 5 and 7 acres of solar. So now you're talking about basically the equivalent for one generator, 15 to 21 acres of solar panels to come for one generator. This facility was going to have 168 of those 3 megawatt generators, which equals, to do the math for you, more than 500 megawatts of power, which is enough to power a small town. And this would have been one facility of many, many, many. This one campus was supposed to have at least 4, maybe as many as 13. Virginia has 206 of these of different sizes, some smaller, some bigger, but that's the scale of what we're talking about. And for every one of those generators, each one of those 168 generators requires 164 gallons of diesel per hour to fuel. For each one of those gallons, so gallons of fuel maintenance, it's 1,968 gallons per generator minimum per year because of 1 hour, 12 months, 1 hour per month maintenance. And so that's the equivalent of 45,264 pounds of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere per generator per year minimum. So that's a lot. It's a big number. It's a big number.
So we said, look, these backup generators are going to produce 800,000 pounds of CO2 roughly, each facility. And we believe the industry needs to address that. They need to move in the direction of meeting our state climate goals. And we have hit a brick wall on this. We are not able to get much traction. The bill passed the Senate last night, 44-3.
Three,
So there were, pardon?
three, 44
Great.
to 3.
Three senators opposed it. The mighty Sarah Elfreth, Clarence Lamb, and Karen Lewis Young. So if you're in their districts, please thank them. So that the bill is now in the House. The bill is now in the House, and we are working the House trying to get some amendment that could help counterbalance the 800,000 pounds per data center. And we really need help. You need to contact your delegates. You need to call them. You need to weigh in. You need to tell them it's really important, and don't take no for an answer. And which leads me to the last part of this webinar. And Maryland LCV is a nonprofit, and every year we start with a budget of 0, and we have to raise every dollar every year. This session has been very expensive for us. It's worth it. We're happy to do it. But we are running digital ads on Facebook, and we're running Google ads, and we're putting social media posts up, and we are sending out action alerts, and we are doing a phone bank, and we are lobbying hours and hours and hours a day on all these bills. And we could really use support as we move into this crossover time. It is definitely crunch time. And anything you can share, anything, donations you can make, we would be deeply grateful for. Additionally, if there's, we need you to take actions. And in the chat have been a whole number of action alerts you can take. Take them all. We need your work, your voice. We need your support. Your legislators need to hear from you. I think if you've been with us over the last couple of weeks or even the last year, you'll know we've had legislators say, somewhere between 4 or 5 phone calls really is a lot for a bill. So we want to get 10, 15, 20 calls in on these bills and have them really hear from their constituents that what you say to your legislator matters. So we would be grateful for donations that you can make, your friends can make, your neighbors can make, your family can make. And we're very grateful for any actions you can take on behalf of these bills as well. So
my favorite thing when I'm going through the legislature is for people to say, I keep hearing from people, how do I get them to stop? And I say, well, that's easy. Just pass the bill or kill the bill. Yeah. Like whatever we're saying, like this is the thing, like when there's so much attention that they just want to know what to do. And the answer is,
right.
They're here to tell you. They've told you what you need.
Let me get quickly in the last 2 minutes, get to some of the questions that we've gotten. We've got a good question from our friend Tom. And he said, has the PSC conducted a need for power review that considers data center in its forecasts? And I do not know.
I don't know that. There is definitely a look at grid stability and grid infrastructure and what we can take and what we can't. And this was part of like when we're looking to electrify in terms of, vehicle electrification stuff. But data centers, again, that's a whole other kettle of fish. And I don't know if they've looked at that.
Tom, we'll get back to you. Let us do some homework, and we'll do that. We also got a really good question, Kristen, and that is that there's more bills being introduced this year than any other year. And as these growing number of bills occur, is there an opportunity to just extend the session more than 90 days?
90 days. So the 90 days is constitutionally mandated. And one of the things we see, like different states have different session times. Virginia has a 45-day short session alternating years with 60 days. They don't do any less than we do. And in terms of bill numbers, it generally takes as much time as you give them. Our neighbors in Pennsylvania don't do more than we do, and they have a year-long session. So I think actually the compression of 90 days is enough time to actually have some deliberation and discussion, but also gives them a deadline that says we got to get this done. Like the urgency, I think, is part of how we're able to be effective in getting these bills passed.
So constitutionally, we are limited to 90 days. There's no way to extend it.
They can
Let
extend
me,
it, but they can extend it, but they have to do it, but they really can only do it for the budget. If they don't get the budget passed, the operating budget passed, then they can extend it. But that is but that's
right.
really the only path for that.
Okay, great. So in the chat, there's been some good references back and forth. The Washington Post ran a great article recently on data centers. The New York Times ran a great article. Those are in the link. Again, so's our action alerts, so's our donate page. And it's Friday afternoon at 12:30, so we're going to sign off. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Thank you again for working with us. You're great
Thank you so
partners.
much.